Okay. Can everyone hear me? Good. All right. Good deal. Well, I hope things are good for you guys. Things are good here. We're wrapping this thing up for midterm. So let me see. Is the study guide for the midterm posted? It is? Okay, good. All right. So that having been said, then the exam will open tomorrow, and I think you have the 11th through the 16th to take it. And so then it'll be all multiple choice. It's multiple choice if you study, it's multiple guess if you don't. But, it's open note. So, it's not, you can use your resources. I don't mind. That's fine. So use those resources, use your notes. Don't Google something if you're looking for it. Don't do that, because that may not coincide. If you don't know something, your reasoned response is going to be better than just Googling something and coming up with what some person who may not know what they're talking about says. So just go with your well-reasoned conclusion. All right, so do you guys have any questions before I begin working through this list? Is the connection off, or is it just me? Is it off?
I got a question, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So you said you're going to go through the list. I've gone through the list myself, and there are some terms on the study guide list that we don't seem to learn until later in the semester, but yet they're on the. Okay.
Yes. And so raise those with me if I don't bring attention to them. If there's one on there that I see that doesn't apply, I'll tell you. But if there's something that I missed, y'all don't hesitate to say, Dr. Carter, we don't know what the hell you're talking about. Okay.
Because I was worried that I missed some things, and I went over it all again. I'm like, wait, no, we haven't done this yet. So
that's fine. That's fine. So yeah, just do that. Do I hear some Irish accent there, or Scottish accent?
I'm Dutch, from the Netherlands.
Oh, really? From the Netherlands? Even
Yes.
better. That's good. That's good. I heard something going on there. I couldn't figure. How long have you?
It's weird. 4 years now in Houston. So.
Right. Are you happy with it? Do you like it?
I like the people. I miss European cities.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. That's interesting. Have you? This is beside the point, but have you traveled outside of Houston very much, outside of Texas?
I have, yeah, and we have gone on. I've gone on lots of trips, and
okay,
yeah, it's
all right. Good. Well, excellent. All right. So yes, if I come across something, if there's something on here that I missed that we have not covered, or that you don't recall, then you simply let me know. All right. Another question. Any other questions? All right. So I'm looking for a writing instrument of some kind. 1 second.
I think I'm signed into your account because it says Megan Howell.
probably.
Is there a way to mute this thing? Oh, there's a mute button. Okay.
Okay, I'm back. All right. So number one, I mentioned Socrates' primary ethical emphasis, and we should know, I think I brought attention to the fact that his primary ethical emphasis is virtue, right? He's concerned with virtue. He's concerned with humanity, or humanity as we would say it today. And he's not concerned with metaphysics or nature. So we talked about that. let me see. Ugly, got to find the silver lining. I'm sorry that the class has been ugly and you have to find a silver. I'm sorry. No, I don't know what the chat's about. So anyhow, number two, Socrates' view of humanity. That's pretty basic. You'll want to remember that Socrates really is concerned in his ethics about humanity and about virtue and about self-reflection and those kinds of things. There were what were called the pre-Socratic metaphysicians. They were concerned with metaphysics, but Socrates is not concerned with metaphysics. He's not concerned with the nature of ultimate reality. Socrates was essentially concerned with being a virtuous person. We don't use the word virtue that much in our world, but virtue, we might use the word character or integrity, being a decent human being. And he also thought that we could learn to be virtuous people. We can be taught to be virtuous people. Even if we aren't virtuous people, he held out a word of hope that we can be taught virtue, how to be virtuous. Number three, his primary mantra was know thyself. And by that, Socrates thought that when we know ourselves and we practice self-insight and self-reflection, that as a result of that, that begins the ethical journey. We can make changes and adjustments and adaptations to our behavior and to our decision making. So his mantra was know thyself. And he was calling his disciples and his followers to some degree of self-reflection and self-analysis. Then number four, we talked about Socrates' emphasis, like I said, on virtue. The word is arete, and it simply means character. It simply means integrity and being a well-behaved individual in relationship to self and in relationship to other individuals. Number five, the thing we talked about was what did Socrates, how do we know what Socrates wrote or what Socrates taught? Well, we don't, because we don't have any record that he ever wrote anything. The only way that we know how Socrates, what Socrates taught is through what? Plato, that's right, Plato. We know that Socrates' teachings are evidenced in the Platonic writings. Now, the Platonic writings, they're entitled dialogues, and they're called dialogues. If you look them up, they're called dialogues because that's what they are. They are typically dialogues, discussions, conversations between two or three individuals regarding a moral issue or an ethical dilemma. And so Plato's dialogues divide into three categories. They are the early dialogues and the middle dialogues and the later dialogues. So the early dialogues are most reflective, probably, Platonic scholarship says, of of Socrates' teachings, because those are the ones that exist in the closest proximity of time to the teachings of Socrates in his relationship with Plato. The middle dialogues are somewhat of a blend, most scholars believe, between Plato and Socrates' teachings. And then the later dialogues, the last dialogues that Plato penned, are more Platonic, and he evidences and reflects more independent thinking and more of his own thought and his own perspective. And that kind of plays itself out in all of our lives. You know, I had in psychology professors and in philosophy professors that made an influence on me, but the older I've gotten, the more I see their comments more objectively, and so I differ with them on certain issues. That's just the way that it works. So the dialogues, number 6, number 5, the Republic. That's Plato's big work. That's his magnum opus, we might say. His grand work, where he really presents the compendium of his teachings. In the Republic, he talks about his philosophy of art. He talks about his philosophy of social life. He talks about ethics. He talks about social structure. And so that's what's really relevant for ethics. Did we talk about that? We talked about in Plato, Plato likens the human personality unto the three dimensions of society. Did we talk about that? Yeah, okay, good. So Plato says, just to refresh your memory, Plato says that society consists of three categories of individuals. They are the lawmakers of a sort, and then the guardians, and then the tradesmen, the people who carry out the artisans, etc. And so society consists of those three categories of individuals: people who pass the laws and do the governing, people who enforce the laws, and then people who carry on their everyday lives and live by the laws. And so Plato uses that tripartite understanding of society with regard to his understandings of the individual, that we have that part of us that is the working part, the energizing part. We have that part of us that is the moderation part, of the governing part, the enforcers, which is reason and rationality, I think he would say. And then we have the more intellectual, cerebral aspect. But the point of it is, when we have balance, he says, in society between those three realms, we have a balanced, well-rounded society. And so he applies that on the individual basis to say that when we are balanced in all three aspects of our being, mind, body, soul, energies, etc., then we are living well-balanced, well-rounded lives. All right, let me see. Does that make sense? So balance is what Plato is really calling for. And we hear this stuff today about, all the live a well-balanced life, as though our generation or our era is the first era that's ever come up with this notion. There's nothing new under the sun, really. Plato was advocating balance. What happened? Are you there? Okay, all right, good. So I have no idea what happened. On my end, everything went blank. So
we were still able to see you.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, we were wondering what you were looking at.
I didn't do anything stupid or anything like pick my nose or whatever, did I? Right? Okay, good. Okay,
No, you're good.
I just look confused as hell. That's all.
All right. All right, good. All right. So, we think we're the first generation to talk about, our first era to talk about balance and well-being, but Plato was talking about it long before, and probably people were talking about it long before Plato. But balance is the key, Plato says, to an ethical life, and that's hard to maintain. But I won't go there. All right, so we've got the Republic and the dialogues. We've got the Socratic writings. There are no Socratic writings. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, what are their relationships? Socrates is the teacher. Plato was Socrates' student. Aristotle was Plato's student. And despite that, the fact that they were all teacher students, there are differences of perspectives there. Socrates emphasizes virtue and ethics. Plato emphasizes, he's kind of the beginning of deontological ethics, or an ethics committed to a moral code. And Aristotle is committed to a consequentialist or outcome or results oriented understanding of ethical decision making. Plato's theory would not be consequentialist, it would be non-consequentialist. So the point is, there's some degree of difference between those individuals. Socrates emphasizes virtue, Plato emphasizes non-consequentialism, duty to a moral code, and Aristotle emphasizes consequences, making moral decisions based upon the best outcome, the best consequences, or the best result. All right, so let me see. People like Immanuel Kant and natural law ethics and divine command ethics, those are more duty-oriented ethics. They have their roots in Platonic thought. Other theories like utilitarianism of Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill, those are more Aristotelian in that they focus upon consequences, outcome, producing the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Now the number 9, I'm not sure we talked very much about number 9 in the world of forms, did we? I don't think we did. So sometimes I'll go into Plato's analogy of the cave, and I wish that I would have, but I didn't do that. But we won't worry about number 9, so we're going to mark that off. And there shouldn't be.
Professor, is number 9 artisans, guardians, thinkers? Is that what it is?
Number 9?
Uh-huh.
I just have on number 9 Plato in the world of forms.
Does it mean artisans, guardians, thinkers?
Oh, no.
Okay.
No, good question. No. Plato's world of forms, just to kind of summarize, even though we didn't cover it and I won't have it on the exam. Plato's world of forms, Plato says there is an unseen world that exists that is parallel to this world. If the unseen world, the world of forms, is where the essences of everything exist. Some have called it the furniture of the universe, all right, such as table nests, chair nests, dog nests, cat nests. The way that I try to explain it is through the religious understanding of the afterlife. If you have any religious context or religious background, you know that religion emphasizes frequently the life to come, where things are perfect and things are permanent and things are eternal. So while Plato is not emphasizing that religious aspect, he is saying that there's a world of forms that exists, that everything in this world is a reflection of. In this world, things are imperfect. For example, this table, Plato says, this table that is in front of me, my desk, it's imperfect. It's going to deteriorate. It's going to fall away. It's going to fall apart. Plato says this table, the essence of what makes it a table is tableness. All right, that's what makes this thing a table. It has tableness about it. So where did the idea of building a table and tableness come from? Plato says, interestingly enough, Plato says this, that in the world of forms, our soul, which is eternal, existed with all of these forms like tableness, and they made an impression upon our soul. And so when our soul was united with the body, we have the impression of a table, the essence of tableness on our soul. And as a result of that, someone makes a table in this world. So it's like the concept of a tableness is imprinted upon our souls in the world of forms. And when our soul is born into this world and united with the bodies, we bring that concept in our mind. And so then a person makes a table, or a person builds a house, or a person, engages in some kind. That's where all of these things come from. It's very interesting. But that's not on the exam, so y'all don't have to worry about that. But I wish I would have talked more about that, but I didn't. All right, Plato and the eternal. Did we talk about that? I don't think we're really going to talk anything significant. I don't think there's anything on the exam about that. Plato and the universal. Since that applies to the world of forms at number 11, we're going to take that off. All right, Plato and the rationally comprehensible. The point I'm wanting you to get on number 12 is this, that Plato is the beginning of rationalism, that Plato thinks that we can discern the right or the wrong thing, morality, ethical, unethical, just through reason. Because morality is imprinted upon our soul from the world of forms. All right. So we have in our minds the concept of right and wrong. And through reflection and through logic and through reasoning, we kind of have this code that's imprinted upon our soul that enables us to assess moral versus immoral, ethical versus unethical. So ethics is rationally comprehensible or comprehensible according to Plato. Now, does that make sense? You don't have to look at the consequences. You don't have to look at the outcome of your moral decisions. You don't have to look at the results of your moral decisions. All you have to do is think logically, and you will be able to logically and rationally arrive at a conclusion regarding what is right and what is wrong, what is ethical, what is unethical, because you're kind of imprinted on your soul with this eternal moral standard from the world of forms that is unseen. Does that make sense?
Yes.
If we were to take that back to if we might say it like this, that we have a, oh my God, what was I just going to say? We have a moral, that's where our moral consciousness comes from, Plato would say, that we're born with a sense of moral consciousness, a sense of oughtness, what we ought to do, what we ought not to do. And that we are to reflect upon that, and through reason and rationality, we can assess what the good life is and what the ethical life is. So reason is important. All right, so number 13, I don't think we spent a lot of time talking about the Platonic virtues. Do y'all have anything about that?
I have moderation, fortitude, wisdom, justice.
Okay.
These are from your notes.
All right, moderation, fortitude, wisdom, and justice. Those are going to be very good. Those are going to come out when we get down to number 30, 31, 32. Augustine was a Neoplatonist, and Augustine took those Platonic virtues, and that's where we will talk about the Platonic virtues in relationship to Augustine. So let's hold on to Platonic virtues and vices. Let's just kind of mark that out and deal with that when we get to Augustine. Is that good? Do you see that? Augustine in temperance, Augustine in fortitude, Augustine in wisdom, Augustine in justice. Those things are simply Augustine's baptizing, so to speak, of the Platonic virtues. And I'll talk about those in a moment. Plato and reason, we've kind of talked about that. We discern morality through rationality and reason. All right, number 16, the golden means. Didn't we spend quite a bit of time talking about the golden means? The golden means derives from who?
Aristotle.
Very good, Aristotle. Yes, Aristotle. This is Aristotle's concept, the golden means. A means is a balancing point or a midpoint, and so I tried to illustrate to you how that works. Aristotle says that when it comes to the virtues, and you'll find sometimes 10 people who list that Aristotle had 10 virtues, sometimes up to 15, maybe even more. But when it comes to the virtues that we are to portray in our lives, Aristotle says we have to have a balance. And I really like his concept of the golden means. It's very practical. We have to have a balance. We can't have an excess and we can't have a deficiency. We have to keep it in the virtues in balance. And I illustrated that with the virtue of courage, I think. An excess of courage is foolhardiness. A lack of courage or a deficiency in courage is cowardice. I illustrated that with regard to loyalty and excess of loyalty and the deficiency of loyalty. Did I tell you all about the Housewives of California that I watch?
No.
No.
I'm addicted.
Yes, it was the Housewives of Atlanta, though.
It was some of the Housewives show, yeah.
Or
Yeah,
someplace.
yeah, some of them,
It was
yeah.
I forgot where it was, but that's your guilty pleasure with your wife. Like when
That
you're
always, that's my guilty pleasure. That's right. So that's my brain dead time. Yeah. So because that always comes to mind when I get to the Aristotelian virtue of loyalty, because there's so little loyalty. The loyalty is so fickle on those shows. But anyhow, and really it's pretty fickle in life sometimes too. But anyhow, so we talked about loyalty, courage, loyalty, and patience. We talked about those things. So you should have a pretty good grasp of the golden means and just understand how the golden means works. When you're going through these questions, look for the concepts that we talked about. They may not specifically address the issue that we're talking about, but it'll say Aristotle and his golden means, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. But look for the concepts, just be familiar with what his concept of the golden means is. And then analytically think your way through the answers and look for the answers that best reflect what we talked about. Some of the answers will not have beans to do with what we talked about. And you'll look at that and you'll say, what the hell is that about? But then others of them will evoke, oh, I remember us talking about that in relationship to Aristotle. And so kind of think your way through those things. But make sure you go through, you look at A, you look at B, you look at C, you look at D, you look at A, and you say, okay, that's a maybe, or you put a question mark by it. B, you say, well, that one's stupid, so that one's out. C, oh, that's pretty good. You put a check by it. D, that's pretty bad. You put it, so you're left with, you're left maybe with A and C. And so then you look at A and C and you make your choice. But look at all the options and just mark through them. That's kind of a good method for any multiple choice exam. So anyhow, we talked about, let me see. Did we talk about Aristotle and Platonic dualism?
No.
I don't think we did. He rejected Platonic dualism, but I don't think that's on the exam, or I'm almost positive I didn't put that on the exam. Aristotle and consequentialism. So I should have talked about that. Aristotle is a consequentialist. All right, he's a consequentialist. And so he emphasizes that we make moral decisions based upon the consequences, the results, or the outcome. And as such, he provides the foundation really for what will later become utilitarianism. Anyhow, anything else that you need to ask about Aristotle and consequentialism? All right, then let's look at Epicureanism. Epicureanism is a hedonistic theory. They emphasize pleasure. The Epicureans get a bad rap because people portray the Epicureans to be just lust-driven, lascivious pagans. No, they really weren't. They were driven by pleasure and said that the best life is a life that is accommodating to pleasure. But they divided a life into two levels of pleasure. The lower pleasures, which are appetitive pleasures, sexual pleasures, and then the higher pleasures, which are the more intellectual, cerebral, academic pleasures, the arts, fine literature, etc. So they were striving to live a more well-rounded life in that sense. So we have to give them credit for that. Were there Epicureans who were out of control? Probably there were, but I think the Epicureans get a bad rap. They originated from Epicurus. That may be on the exam. I don't know if I said that. Did I say that in class, Epicurus?
No.
Yeah, so you might file that away. I think they did originated from Epicurus. All right. That's the Epicureans. Now, another thing about the Epicureans, did we talk about radical materialism? All right, go ahead.
You said it means being materialistic.
Yes. Materialism emphasizes being that human beings are nothing more than physical matter. All right, that when you die, you die. That's it. There's nothing else. That's materialism. Radical materialism says that you may have a spirit that's the essence of your being, but even it is in some fashion is connected with your physicality. And so when you die, even your spirit dies. All right. We think of the spirit based upon Platonic dualism in our religious culture. We think of the body dying and the spirit living on. That's materialism, but in some sense. But radical materialism is that when you die all over, for lack of a better way to say it. There's nothing about you that lives forever, nothing about you that endures. I kind of think about Judaism My understanding of Judaism and my interaction with some of my peers is that, there's no sense of there's no sense of spiritual immortality. When you die, you die. The immortality in at least modern day Jewish faith is the idea of biological immortality. That's why the Holocaust was such a scandal. For the person of Jewish persuasion, Jewish descent, your immortality is biological in your offspring, in your family members, that's why the Holocaust was so scandalous, because it almost exterminated the Jewish future. So that's kind of what I think of when I get to radical materialism. When you die all over. That's what I would say about radical materialism. Even your soul or spirit dies when your body dies. That's the end of you. All right. So radical materialism. Now then, Epicureans and prudence. Did we talk about that?
Yes.
What did I say about that? Is it
You said a wise life was one lived for the pleasures, wisdom.
Yes. Okay, that's good enough. That's good enough. Just a wise life is one that's lived for pleasure, enjoyment, fulfillment. Purpose, meaning, and significance is found in the fulfillment of the pleasures, the higher pleasures and the lower pleasures. All right. Now, the Stoics, something that I did see that may pop up on your exam that I don't think I brought enough attention to is the origin of the Stoics, because it's a little interesting. The Stoics were the originators of, obviously, Stoicism. They were, how do I say this? They sat at the marketplace in Greek city-states where you would enter into the cities. There was kind of an entryway, if you read about it. And in that entryway was where the Stoics sat and they pondered the great things of life, all right? And it was called the Stoa Poikile. You don't have to remember that word, I don't think. Stoapoikile, I think, Stoa Poikile. That was the porch where the Stoics sat, and they would philosophize about things. And so that's where they originated from. So know that concept, be able to recognize that that's where they originated from. When I think about that, I think about little towns that I grew up, the little town that I grew up in. We had a grocery store in the little town, and in the morning when you went to the grocery store, you had these old men who had retired, who would sit there on the Dr. Pepper bench or the Coke bench or the bread bench outside of the store, and they would talk about politics and they would talk about economy and all this kind of stuff. They were kind of the Stoics of the little town where I grew up in, and that's really kind of the image that we get of the origination of the Stoics, that they just kind of sat around and philosophized about economy and politics and religion and God and those kinds of things. So maybe you can identify with that in some fashion, although I know that that's probably a part of a life gone by these days. But if you grew up in a small town, you certainly know. All right, the Stoics and passivity. The Stoics thought that obviously the best way to approach life was in a Stoic fashion. Be passive. Don't try to change what life sends your way. Don't try to alter what life sends your way. Just accept it. You can't change it. You can't alter it. And in fact, the Stoics said, if you start trying to improve your lot in life or change your lot in life, you're going to make yourself miserable. And that's not a good thing to do, they said. So just be stoic and accept what life sends your way. Interestingly enough, I was talking to a man this morning at church who he works with the State Department, and he's a very sharp guy, and we were talking about just progress in life and success in life and living a good life. And we were standing out on the church parking lot, and he said, he made this comment. He said, you know, Stoics never accomplish anything. And that was completely out of the blue. He was saying, you know, there are some things that we have to have passion about. But he said, because, you know, Stoics never accomplish anything. They just sit in their office and gripe about things, because he's a business guy. He says, but Stoics never accomplish anything because all they do is brood on things and the fact that they have no control. But he says we have to take active control. But he also said the wisdom in life is knowing when we can make a difference and when we can't, knowing the difference. But the Stoics were just generally passive. So that's the thing to know about the Stoics. Wisdom for the Stoics was knowing that you can't alter life, that there are some things you can change maybe, but wisdom is just knowing how to enjoy life and not get caught up in all the chaos of it all. So any questions about the Stoics? All right, the skeptics. Obviously, the word skeptic means they doubted everything. The skeptics said you can't know right and wrong. We can't know if there is a standard, an absolute standard of morality, right and wrong. If there is one, we can't know that we can ever know it. They were skeptical of the senses. They were skeptical of reason and rationality. They were skeptical of morality and ethics. They were skeptical of everything. They were the doubters of everything. They questioned authority. They were the hippies of their day and time. All right, so that brings us to Augustine. Augustine represents a shift in ethics because he moves toward a religious foundation with regard to ethics. So Augustine builds his ethical system upon the work of Plato. Augustine was a Neo-Platonist, a new Platonist. He read Plato. He was exposed to Plato through, I think it was Irenaeus or Ambrose. I can't remember which one, but he read Plato. He liked Plato, and so he baptized Plato into his Christian worldview. As a result, he emphasized the Platonic virtues that are summed up in verses number 30 through 33. Augustine's ethical emphasis centered around what? Did I talk to y'all about that? The love of God, I think it was, but I'm not sure that I talked about that.
I don't think so.
Yeah, the love of God. You know, Augustine took Plato, baptized him into his Christian worldview, and said ethics and ethical behavior has its origins or roots in our love for God. And
you said it was the giving of self to
God. Yeah, the giving of self to God. Very good. Yeah. And so he more specifically addresses that in terms of the Platonic virtues there. Augustine and temperance. Temperance just means balance. We have a balanced approach to life. Moderation in all things is the way Christian theology puts it. We're to have moderation. That's almost a reflection of Aristotle's golden means, but that's not on your exam, that part of it. This is Platonic, not Aristotle, but Augustine and temperance, we have to have balance in all things. Augustine, a pre-convert, was anything but balanced. He was a wild child, and but he found virtue in Plato's concept of temperance and balance. Then Augustine and fortitude. The word fortitude just simply means endurance. Fortitude, endurance. Some people translate it patience, but it means more than patience. It means durance. Hupameno is the Greek word. You don't have to know that. To remain under is what it literally means. There's my neighbor walking down the street. It's the little boy with this new dog. How sweet is that? That's sweet. All right, so temperance is balance. Fortitude is endurance. Wisdom roots in our love for God, knowing good from bad, ethical from unethical, asking God for guidance, etc. And then Augustine says love for God calls us to pursue justice or fairness in society. and fairness in relationship, practice fairness in relationship to other people. So those are the Platonic virtues, and they were baptized by Augustine into the Christian, his Christian worldview. Aquinas starts number 34. Aquinas, reason and rationality. All right, so I'm going to hit number 35 as well. Aquinas rooted his philosophy, not theology, his philosophy in Aristotle. Plato rooted his in, Augustine rooted his in Plato. Aquinas lived about 1274, 1275, maybe he died about 1274, 1275. But anyhow, he rooted his philosophy, his moral philosophy in Aristotle. As a result, we have a natural law coming from Aquinas and Aristotle, but we'll talk more about that in a moment. Aquinas's great work, Summa Theologica, I'm not sure we talked about that. Did we talk about that?
It was mentioned, but
It was mentioned, okay, so.
Yeah, we talked about it in natural law.
Natural law, yeah, okay, so that's his great work, and that's where he presents this stuff. Aquinas and consequentialism. Aquinas was a consequentialist because Aristotle was a consequentialist. This thing of natural law, on the one hand, I think an argument can be made that it's natural, that it's consequentialist, and then on the other hand, it's non-consequentialist. It's very interesting. I think it can go both ways. But that's not a question on the exam, I promise you. Aquinas and Ambrose, did we talk about Aquinas and Ambrose? So take that off. We've already talked about the fact that there are no Socratic writings. We talked about Aristotle and the ethic of moderation. That's his concept of the golden means, right? Then deontological ethics, that simply defined is an ethic of duty. Duty to a moral code. Examples of duty to a moral code might include the civil law, speed limit signs, or the requirement to buckle up in your car. Another example would be a religious code like the Ten Commandments. Another example would be a professional code like the nursing code of ethics, or the engineering code of ethics, or the lawyer's code of ethics, or the medical doctor's code of ethics, a social worker's code of ethics. Those are codes that you're supposed to keep as a professional, regardless of the consequences. So that deontological ethics deals with moral codes. Deontological ethics is also known as non-consequentialist ethics because it is not concerned with consequences. Teleological ethics is known as consequentialist ethics. We talked about that. An example of teleological ethics would be utilitarianism, because it looks at the consequences or the results of, or the outcomes of our moral decisions. Deontological ethics has its roots in Plato. Teleological ethics has its roots in Aristotle. Then consequentialist and non-consequentialist, my gosh, I've beaten that horse to death already. Consequentialist is Aristotle or teleological. Non-consequentialist is deontological or Plato. All right, so then we talked about Mr. Kant, Mr. Immanuel Kant, and we talked about Kantian ethics. Kantian ethics is a non-consequentialist ethic. I should have given you the illustration of Anne Frank, did I? All right, good. So the Anne Frank illustration, we tell the Nazis that Anne Frank, Kant says, we should tell the Nazis that Anne Frank is hiding in our attic because the right thing to do is to tell the truth. And and we say, well, Mr. Kant, but Anne may die. He says, I don't care. Tell the truth. Well, that's problematic, right? We kind of strain at a gnat and swallow a camel, so to speak. We tell the truth, but Anne dies. How productive is that? Does that help us sleep well at night? I told the truth today, but poor old Anne, she's going to die. So that's a problem with Kantian ethics, being non-consequentialist, but that's the way Kant works. So then we talked about the categorical imperative of Immanuel Kant, right? The categorical imperative version 1 says, act in such a way, and when you are confronted with a moral dilemma, act in such a way that you would will that everyone else act in the very same way. That is the categorical imperative version 1. That is based upon the principle of universalizability. Act like you would want everyone to act. So Mr. Kant says, you're confronted with the dilemma of what to tell the Nazi soldier. You should ask yourself, what would I want everyone to do in their lives? I would want everyone to tell the truth. Therefore, you tell the truth. Why? Because you cannot live in a world where everyone is lying. You can't have relationships, friendships, you can't have contracts, you can't carry on commercial activity, you can't have marriages and families. That's what Mr. Kant says. The problem with Mr. Kant at that point is suddenly he becomes a consequentialist. It's kind of a weird thing, but he hates consequentialism, but he becomes a consequentialist. So anyhow, that's Mr. Kant's categorical imperative number 1. It's built upon the principle of universalizability. Categorical imperative version number 2 says we should always treat others as an end and not as a means. I like to say that that is a reflective of treating others with dignity. Mr. Kant was into treating others with dignity and respect. And so I don't use students for my own purposes just to pay my bills. I actually try to teach you. I don't, as a business person, you don't use the consumer just to make money. You actually try to help the consumer. So you treat people as an end in and of themselves. You don't use them for your own purposes. There are other versions of, there's a third version of the categorical imperative. Did we talk about that? I don't typically give much attention to it. So I think you'll be good with those too. All right, so that's Mr. Kant. Any questions about Mr. Kant? I like Kant. I think he's great, but I think his ethics. A weakness of Kant is it does lead to absurd outcomes. Anne dies. We tell the truth and Anne dies. That's absurd. A weakness of Kant is he doesn't show us how to apply it. He just gives us the principle. He doesn't really demonstrate to us how to apply it. So those are weaknesses. A strength of Mr. Kant is it's pretty simple, perhaps too simple. All right, so that's Kant. Utilitarianism. Now then, utilitarianism entails 48 and 49, John Stuart Mill and Jeremy Bentham. Utilitarianism is an interesting theory. Utilitarianism says that we should, when we're making a moral decision, we should make the decision that will produce the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people. Make the decision that will produce the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people. That's the utilitarian thing they say. All right, so what does that mean? Well, that means we have to base our decisions upon consequences, results, or outcomes. We look at the consequences, the results, or the outcomes, and then we make our moral decisions. Now, did I give you all the illustration of leading the old man across the street?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Remember the illustration? That demonstrates a weakness, a problem with utilitarianism, because we can really never know the outcome, results, or the consequences until after we've made the moral decision and we're waiting on the results to come in. For example, in one illustration, I used the story of leading the old man across the street and he gets across safely. Well, then we look back and say that was a good decision. But then in the next one, I used the illustration of leading the old man across the street. We trip and fall and bump into him and knock him into an oncoming car and he dies. Well, then in that instance, it was the same decision, but utilitarianism would say it was the bad decision because it led to bad consequences. So the same decision may be good under one in one context and bad in another context. So that's an issue. And then the other issue is you really can't know whether or not it was a bad or good decision until the consequences have come in. But utilitarianism is a great policy ethical guideline. We use it in government all the time. Government passes a law and regarding healthcare or regarding COVID vaccines, and they make the best decision for the greatest number of people that will produce the best outcome, what they think, and then they review that and look back and say, well, we could have done better, or we did well. And so that's an example of how utilitarianism works. We talked about Jeremy Bentham first. Bentham is a quantitative utilitarian. And I gave you the apple illustration there. We talked about John Stuart Mill. He is a qualitative utilitarian, and I gave you the apple illustration there, I think. And Mr. Bentham is concerned with the quantity. Mr. Mill is concerned with the quality of the outcome. Quantity of the outcome, Bentham; quality of the outcome, Mill. So Mr. Mill is much more complicated than Bentham. All right, now then, so that's 49. Now then, number 50, Soren Kierkegaard. Did we talk about him? We did?
Yes.
We talked about him under what?
Divine command ethics.
Oh, he's a reflection of divine command ethics. All right. All you need to know about him is he's an advocate of divine command ethics. He's also an advocate of theistic existentialist ethics. Did we talk about existentialism? Oh, we
That's
didn't.
coming up
No.
after midterm, I think. Those
Yeah,
two.
okay. I'm thinking, oh my God, I can't believe I haven't talked about existentialism. I've got to talk about that. That's one of my favorites. All right. So, okay. So right now, just know that Kierkegaard is an advocate of divine command ethics based upon the story of Abraham and Isaac in the Old Testament. And that divine command ethics means exactly what it says. We do what God commands. And it's a problematic theory. It's a really problematic theory. It's a religious theory. I really don't like divine command ethics. 50, 51, 50, I think it's a dangerous theory. All right. Because so many times it's anti-rational. All right. Emotivism. Did we talk about that?
No.
No, so I think 52, 53, and 54 are also still coming up because I see the lectures that you posted, but they're posted for after.
Okay, good. Perfect. So
Unless someone correct me if I missed that, sorry.
Did anyone miss it? Did anyone get it?
Yeah,
All right.
52, 53, 54, we have not reached those.
Okay,
topics.
very good. Very good. Let me see. So I don't think there's questions on those on the exam. If there are, I will eliminate those and give you credit for them. I will not hold you accountable. That's what I'm saying. I don't think there are, but if there are, if those slip through, I will point. If those slip through and you see them on your exam, be sure to tell me. All right. Categorical imperative 1, we've already talked about that. Any questions additionally about that?
So Professor, categorical imperative version 1 is universalizability.
Yes.
Okay. And version 2 is ends in themselves.
Yes. Treat people as ends and not as means.
Okay.
Yes. All right. Natural law ethics. Did I give you guys the little paradigm of the life process and the life cycle, beginning with sex leading to conception and conception leading to birth? And
Yes.
then I gave you that all the way through life. And then I told you how natural law ethics would apply on the issue of contraception and abortion, all those
Yes.
things. Right?
Yes.
Right. All right. So you should pretty well have that. That originates from Aquinas, and that's Roman Catholic ethics, basically. And so now on the news, when you hear that the Pope has spoken against those issues, you'll know why. People think that the Pope just arbitrarily decides that. No. It's based upon natural law. All right. Just like there are physical laws in the universe, this approach says there are natural moral laws in the universe that are not to be trifled with, right? All right, so capital punishment, natural law would be against it. Abortion, natural law would be against it. Contraception, natural law would be against it. Natural law ethics has its origin in Aristotle and Aquinas. Aristotle first and Aquinas. Aquinas just baptized Aristotle into the Christian faith, his teachings into the Christian faith. Hedonism simply means pleasure, an ethic of pleasure. Epicureanism is an example of hedonism. Epicurus is the founder of Epicureanism. All right. And Plato and hedonism, don't worry about that. 64, don't worry about that. Thomas Hobbes, I don't think we talked about Hobbes, did we? So no, there shouldn't be anything there. All right, virtue ethics, did we talk about that? Virtue ethics is character ethics. The thing to know about virtue ethics, the big thing to know is virtue ethics is different than the traditional approaches to ethics because it asks the question of what kind of person should I be rather than what should I do? What kind of person should I be rather than what should I do? So virtue ethics emphasizes virtue or being. All right. So let me see. That's the big deal with virtue ethics. Any clarifications needed for virtue ethics? Virtue ethics has its origins also in Aristotle and the virtues and vices, but we didn't talk about those that in detail. Nicomachean ethics, that's Aristotle's work on ethics. I don't think that's on the exam, but it might be just a fact question. Eudaimonia means happiness. I don't know if I talked about that. Did I talk about that?
Mm.
All right. Ethics versus morality, probably the very first couple of classes. Some people say those words are synonyms. Others say ethics is more general. The ethics of a society, the ethics of a culture, the ethics of a people group. Morality is more personal, individual. So know that. Meta-ethics is theoretical ethics. Examples of meta-ethics would be, in my mind, natural law ethics, utilitarianism, Kantian ethics, theoretical ethics. Some people would disagree with me on that, but that's the way I think about it. Virtue ethics, we talked about that. The golden means, we talked about that. Existentialism's coming up. We're not going to worry about that, right? 75, existentialism, godly, theistic existentialism, no. Ungodly existentialism, we're not going to worry about that. Kierkegaard, he only applies for the purposes of this exam to divine command theory, right? Am I doing right? Am I? Okay. Sartre, we haven't talked about him, or Camus. Oh my God, I'm eliminating half the damned exam. My God, my God. All right. I think since we haven't talked about existentialism, none of the rest of that is on there. The rest of that is existentialism. Oh my God, I should go back and revamp everything, but I won't because I don't
It
have
should
time.
be fairly easy then, right?
I mean, we are going to
It
do
should
it,
be
just
fairly
not yet.
easy then, right?
Yeah, you're going to do it, but not yet. So it should, yeah, it's going to be, the topics are going to be more narrow than this reflects, okay? Because 80 through 94, those are coming up after, well, we're going to cover those up. That's going to be on the final. That'll be on the final. Okay? Wow.
Well, I guess we all should pass with what we got so far.
Well, if you don't pass, your blood is on your own hands.
Right.
All right. Just think your way through it. And it's not hard. It's not that hard. Just think your way through it. And you'll do fine. And then what I will do is I will wait till everyone finishes the exam, till the exam is closed. And then I will look at the grades and I'll determine if there's going to be a curve or need to be a curve. And I'll add that. And then we'll talk about any questions regarding we'll talk about any questions on the exam that you have questions about, or maybe a topic that we didn't address, a question that might have slipped through. Y'all point those out to me and we'll go from there. Okay. All right. Do y'all have any questions for me? Yes, ma'am.
One last question, sorry. So I've done all the lectures, I've done, everything I need to do. how much, because the reading sometimes gets quite complicated and long, how much of the exam is based upon, like you could only have found that answer in the reading type of questions, if that makes sense.
Virtually,
Like it was supplemental and it helped me understand, but
yeah,
how much?
that's kind of the purpose. I'm trying to think of a way to say this because I don't want you to think that you read in vain, because the readings are supplemental.
Yeah,
But if I emphasize it in the lecture, that's going to be on the exam.
okay.
I'm not going to pull some obscure data from the readings and throw that on there. Just I'm
Yeah,
not
I was
gonna-
worried about that it was gonna
Yeah,
be
don't
like
worry
on
about
page 30 hidden somewhere, and I'm like, I missed that part. So
Yeah, no, don't worry about that. That's what law school professors do.
So no trick questions?
All right, Ms. Jones.
I said, so no trick questions, huh?
Now, Ms. Jones, here's my response on that. All right, are you ready? My
Yes.
response is, in all of my years of teaching, I have found that the only trick questions are the questions that students miss. Have you ever noticed that?
That's true.
I'm teasing. I'm joking.
I
I'm joking.
know, I know.
I really strive not to put any trick questions on there.
Right.
I strive to be pretty direct and to the point. If you think one is a cheap shot, you let me know and we'll talk our way through it. Okay?
No, you're a good professor.
All right. Yeah. If you think one is a cheap shot, you let me know and we'll talk our way through it. We'll deal with it.
Okay.
All right. Good. Yes,
Professor,
Yes.
yes, I have a question. Is logic and environmental ethics, deep ecology ethics, are they part of the syllabus for midterm?
Did we talk about deep ecology ethics? We did, didn't we?
Yes.
we did.
Okay. Deep ecology ethics.
No.
All you need to know about deep ecology ethics is that it's an environmental ethics. The founder is Arnie Nace. I'm glad you said that. Is it Arathi? Arathi?
Yes.
Arathi?
Yes.
Glad you said that. Arnie Nace is the advocate for deep ecology ethics. Deep ecology ethics is an environmental ethics approach, and it emphasizes that the quality and the value of all life, and that the entire life that we're a part of is an ecosphere. All life has equal value. You know those things, you'll be in good shape on any question on deep ecology ethics. Environmental ethics, deep ecology, and then the ethics of care. Did we talk about that? Feminist ethics?
No.
All right. We didn't talk about it?
No.
We
No.
did.
You did?
Wait, am I supposed to say no so he doesn't put any questions on it? In that case, we did not. We did not.
No.
There may be one or two questions on feminist ethics. An ethic of care, rejecting male hierarchical, white male hierarchical ethics. It's an ethic of care. We do the caring thing. It's feminist ethics. So those are, that's all you need to know about feminist ethics. Okay? Arthi, thank you for that. I hadn't, those slipped through. Are there any others?
Logic.
Question, which two
Yeah,
did
logic.
Let me ask about logic. Let me say something about logic. If you know on logic, I think there are maybe a couple of questions on there about logic. Know, what is a valid argument? What is an invalid argument? Understand premise one, premise two, and conclusion. And you know the illustrations that I gave you, you'll be fine on those. Just know what a valid argument is, what an invalid argument is, and I gave you all some illustrations.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you this: if there are examples of argumentation on there, they will be exactly like the examples that I gave you. All right. I didn't twist them or change them or alter them so as to turn them into trick questions. Because I wanted to help, I wanted to make sure that Mrs. Jones is happy. I didn't trick. All right. Okay, good. All right. Any other questions? All right. Now, if you guys have questions between now and the time you take the exam, shoot me an email and I'll check my email. And otherwise, classes resume Tuesday. So we'll be back in class on Tuesday and you can ask there. So anyhow, if y'all have no further questions, I guess we will wrap it up and I will see you on Tuesday. And we will move into existentialist ethics, I think, is next. I'm not sure. I'll have to look to see. But that's it. I'm going to a movie. I'm going to go see the Addams Family with my son. So y'all have a good time. All right. Okay.
You
Bye-bye.
have a good one,
Thank you,
too.
Professor.
Thank
All right,
you.
Isn't this an
See you
online
later.
only class?
Huh?
I thought this was an
Thanks,
online
see you
only
later.
class.
Oh, it is
Yeah.
online only. Yes, it is
Yeah.
online.
Bro, you have my heart sinking. I'm freaking out because I can't do in-person classes. I work
No,
shift
I'm
work.
sorry. No, I will see you on Zoom. I will
I
see
was
you.
like, did I
missing it.
sign up for the wrong one and I've been taking it this
Oh,
whole
I'm
time?
sorry. No,
Nah, you make,
Oh.
bruh.
I'm sorry. All right.
Yeah,
I
'cause,
scared
I
you.
work shift work. I can't do in person.
I understand. I understand. No, I'll see you on Zoom. All right. Y'all take care.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.